Welcome to our fifth Lunch and Learn session in this year's Teacher-Bordered Classroom series from the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio. I'm Stephanie DeMichael, and I've spent 24 years developing new ways to do old things, and the last 7 years supporting teachers as they've shouldered that task too. All information from today will be available via a Wakelet board that I've curated for you, and the link is below in the comments. I should also take this opportunity to mention that I offer free virtual coaching sessions and office hours, so use that Linktree link to get in touch after today. Let's get started. We've survived 20 months of uncertainty. We've been challenged and frustrated. And so, in addition to supporting teachers, I've also been researching the questions: what has worked, what hasn't worked, and most importantly, what did we learn to do better moving forward? Here's what I've been advocating about doing better moving forward, and that's embracing blended learning. I have recorded, if you're new to blended learning, I have recorded a session on this, and you can find it in my YouTube channel under my Lunch and Learn playlist. One of the modalities of blended learning touted as a method to enable engagement and agency in the classroom is the idea of station rotations, and they do not need to be complex. Station rotation is where students shift from one activity to the next. In case you did miss our Lunch and Learn about getting started with blended learning, here's a very brief overview. According to the Christensen Institute, a nonpartisan think tank, it's basically this. Blended learning involves leveraging the internet, meaning some learning is done online, to afford each student a more personalized learning experience, both at home and in school, including increased student control over the time, place, path, and/or pace of learning. This last part is key, and it's a natural and logical outcome of the first two. If we leverage the internet and create personalized learning experiences, we allow students to be free-range hens, and we get to create that teacher-bordered classroom where we get to help instead of take on everything. Think of blended learning as a nice little smoothie where instead of separate ingredients, we a healthy, balanced mix of online and offline activities, general and personalized learning, and both teachers and students contributing to the process. It's yummy and healthy for all. Now, in our current situation with sometimes in-person, sometimes remote learning, it's important to note that a station does not need to be a physical location in a classroom. Sometimes we just can't make that happen, especially given current concerns. Instead, think of each station as a specific chunk of your lesson plan or a learning activity. So look at your lesson plan and take those little chunks and turn them into stations. That way, students don't need to physically rotate if there are limitations in place in your school. Instead, they can shift from one learning activity to the next. Um, but before we get into it, before I share a simple station rotation template with you, let me point out that a station rotation model can take many forms. It doesn't need to be a certain number of stations, um, but I always recommend starting out with the easiest method. If you're new to this is the model I recommend, and it's endorsed by Dr. Catlin Tucker, the guru of all things blended learning. I should point out, and this is of the utmost importance, that at least one station in the station rotation model should be an online one. Not all stations require students to be online, nor should they, but one station has to be. So feel free to pause this recording if you'd like to take a closer look and kind of absorb this. I have been creating a few station rotation templates for teachers over the past year or so, but allow me to walk you through one that I have created specifically for this Lunch and Learn. And this template is available in the Wakelet board for you to customize and use for your own students. Sometimes there's just not enough time to make things on your own, and so I've done that for you. And I'm going to walk you through a sample station rotation using this template. Okay, so as you look at this, I took a lesson. This is a lesson I've done before, music of the 60s and the counterculture. I've created this in Google Slides. It's just easier for me to do it that way. You can do it in any way you want. If you want, do you want PowerPoint or anything like that. The first slide indicates the four stations that's the or learning activities students will be working through. As we mentioned, one needs to be online. I always encourage one to be offline. There's a teacher station and an individual station where just students can kind of get away and reflect and think. Now, this is going to make a little more sense as I walk you through this. In this first slide, what I like to do is just kind of indicate to students what they're going to need. I should also mention that these stations don't need to be done in order. In fact, like there's no starting point. It just is kind of a continuous loop. I This lesson specifically is one that where I would introduce a topic. So it's kind of a good way instead of me front loading information to students and giving them a whole slide deck where I stand up and lecture. This allows them to get into things and sort of explore before we get started with the whole unit. I also have links here at the bottom. These links take students to other individual slides. So let's pretend we're getting started. I'm going to have my students divided into four groups. I'm going to say, okay, one of them's teacher station. I'm going to say, okay, that you and those of you in group one, I want you to meet me right now in the teacher station. Group two, individual station. Group three, online station. Group four, offline station. I always have a YouTube timer, video timer at the front of the classroom to project so that students are aware of how much time they have in each station, and that's up to you. So once you've shared out this link with kiddos, they know exactly what to do. You're in the teacher station meeting in small groups with your students. Here, kiddos, all they need to do is go ahead and click a link. Say I'm in the online station. Boom, takes them right to the slide. I have an essential question. What was the music of the 60s? To what was the music of the 60s your reaction? Sorry, I'm an English major. It's hard for me to end sentences with prepositions. So if this sounds a little awkward, I apologize, but that's just me. So here they have a clear task, and I've provided hyperlinks. This is the online station. Kiddos will work together. And I always include in each station a task for early finishers. One, because you always want to keep students engaged. Two, it's also a classroom management tool. If you have kids who are early finishers and they're just sitting around, they're creating disruptions for other stations. So it's always good to have an early finishers task for your students. Excuse me. Okay. I also include a little home button up here that takes you right back to the home. So students have moved through the first online station. Now they go to the offline station. And here again can be anything like a makerspace or where they're creating or doing things like that. So here they're going to brainstorm they're going to do like this giant brain dump of everything they know about the 60s on a giant piece of paper. And they're going to be creative and, hanging on the wall. And, then again, early finishers create a hashtag and put it on their poster as well. Let's go back home in the teacher-led station. I'm going to meet with those kiddos. We're going to watch a video as a group, and I'm going to get a sense of through this group discussion and guiding questions with the students to get a sense of their background knowledge, and also sort of to set the stage for the idea of what does counterculture mean and what could the music have to do with that? And it's setting it up for, like I said, the unit that we're going to discuss over the course of a week or so. All right, and then in the fourth station where students are working individually, we've got a class Jamboard set up, and now it's sort of like an assessment. And again, if you're giving students the opportunity to create, it's so much better than like a multiple choice assessment because they're creative and they're involved and they're engaged. So to give them a sense of what it was like back then, I'm asking them to write a two-sentence song lyric based on a current event. So their own sort of countercultural protest. And again, another task for early finishers. So very brief review of the station rotation. Um, I will tell you, some teachers like, actually, let me give you some tips from this. And what I'm going to show you now is the template that I've shared in the Wakelet board for you that you can copy and paste and do your own thing. I've got all these slides here for you to customize as you see fit. But I also have here some information for teachers that I do want to share with you. So allow me a moment to do that, please. Just some little tips and things that I've picked up over the past. These are tasks that you can consider for, and you always want to have students doing something. When they're doing something, they're engaged and they're less likely to be disruptive. So here's a whole bunch of things that you could consider including in each station. I also have some tips and tricks. So, for example, in addition to type directions, it's always a good idea to record a 1 minute video of yourself unedited in Screencastify or Flipgrid Shorts, going over expectations and directions for the student. I also like to provide a link for directions in Google Translate for English language learners. Also, like I mentioned, project a YouTube timer at the front of the room to keep everyone on task. And I've got a link to some great uh, timer examples from Gold EDU. If you have absent or quarantined or remote students, this is the third idea, I would consider grouping them together. So if you do have students who are going to be out of the classroom, who are quarantined or who choosing to learn remotely, put all those kiddos together and allow them to work through the stations as a group. It's a lot easier for you than to meet with those kiddos online than it is to have some kids online and some not at the same time. And finally, my fourth tip is to provide an online place, whether it's a Google Doc or a Jamboard, for students to post questions. Now, they're going to have questions as they're learning, and they can't raise their hand and ask you because you're going to be working in the teacher-led station. But this is what I love doing is I encourage the posting of questions, but I encourage students and peers to help answer those questions. It frees up your focus on small group instruction, and it encourages student agency. So again, these are all, the example that I've just walked you through is here for you. So you can just delete these slides if you need them or use them as a model. Um, but like I said, it should be pretty easy I've been doing this model for a while, and this is my most recent iteration, and I think it's pretty good if I do say so myself. And there you have it, a simple, manageable station rotation planner. I hope that the idea of a station rotation allows you to let students explore and to be a very present part of their own learning. This allows you to do what you do best, be the supportive coach. And because this is a lunch and learn, I always like to share out lunch ideas for teachers that are healthy and easy. And this week, in keeping with the station rotation theme, I've got a link for creating a lunch rotation plan. And it even has a downloadable printer for easier organization. Love organization. And finally, again, if you need anything, the first link will connect you to all my socials, so feel free to reach out at any time. The second one connects you to the Wakelet board with links to the things that we discussed today. I'm Stephanie DeMichael. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you for this week's Lunch and Learn. Good luck with your teacher bordered classroom. See you next time.